criminal conspiracy. Former President Donald Trump is criminally charged for trying to overturn the 2020 election and hold on to power.
The attack on our nation's capital on January 6th, 2021 was an unprecedented assault on the seat of American democracy. As described in the indictment, it was fueled by lies.
This is now the third criminal indictment against Donald Trump this year.
Every time they file an indictment, we go way up in the polls. One more indictment, and this election is closed out. Nobody has even a chance.
Hey there, guys. Welcome to the channel. So the left and the media, which are basically the same thing, they still can't understand you. They still can't believe that their constant day in and day out, drip, 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 a 24/7 propaganda isn't working. They can't understand why you haven't turned towards the light and pledged your allegiance to their chosen and propped up puppet, Joe Biden. They just don't get it. And they want to believe that you're just an idiot and you just don't understand what it is, that they've been trying to tell you, and that you just don't understand how truly great that Joe Biden has been for you in your life, and just how dangerous that Donald Trump is, not just to the country and not just to the idea of democracy, but to you. Take a look at this from Chuck Todd.
Voters next fall may be faced with an unprecedented choice, whether to put former President Donald Trump back in the White House or to essentially sign off on his sentencing if he is convicted and send him to prison or a Secret Service protected home confinement. The latest federal indictment accuses Trump of three conspiracies: one, to defraud the United States; another, to deprive voters of a civil right to have their votes counted; and 2 counts of corruptly obstructing an official government proceeding, the certification of the Electoral College vote. The indictment details how Trump was told by his vice president, senior Justice Department leaders who he had appointed, the director of national intelligence who he had hired, senior White House lawyers who he had hired, his cybersecurity agency, senior campaign staffers, state legislators, many of whom endorsed him, and state and federal courts, and that there was no evidence of election fraud and that he had lost the election.
So watch what he's doing here, man. Just reading off the charges as if, the act of charging them makes him guilty. Then they talk about, evidence containing the indictment, and the evidence is that, people told him stuff. So he was told by experts that what he believed was wrong. And this is somehow through some reimagined legal trick and end around the First Amendment that the government and the whole of the media believe that now we can prosecute Trump's speech based on, what it was that he believed. And of course, the government can tell you what it was that he believed. So as long as the government mind readers can tell a jury what you think, then now your words are now a weapon, allegedly.
Trump's campaign even paid 2 outside research firms to try to prove his electoral fraud claims. But they never released the findings because the firms disputed his theories and they could not offer any proof that he had won.
I'm already stopping this thing too much, but the fact that they are literally commissioning studies to prove, what he believes, isn't that in a way actual proof that he did indeed actually believe it?
And Trump is alleged to have repeatedly acknowledged in private that he actually lost the election, in contrast to his public statements. And yet, as the indictment lays out, it was not illegal in and of itself for Trump to lie. That is protected speech. But it was the actions the indictment alleges that he took that were illegal, using claims of election fraud that he knew were false to try to get state officials to change electoral votes, organizing fraudulent slates of electors in 7 targeted swing states, deceiving them in many cases to sign on to the scheme, sending states' Justice Department letters falsely claiming that there were concerns about a specific state's election outcome.
How can you falsely claim that there are concerns? You're either concerned or you're not concerned. Something tells me that they were genuinely concerned, and to hear Trump talk, he sounds like he has the very, very same concerns today, probably even more so. Let me know in the comments what you guys think. And guys, before we continue, thanks to everyone that's been subscribing and leaving such great comments. Guys, we really appreciate the support. We're growing and we're growing fast. And if you haven't already, please help us with the algorithm. Like, comment, subscribe. Most importantly, share the channel. This is going to be an awesome journey together. Every time you do one of those things, a leftist loses their wings.
Pressuring Vice President Pence to use his ceremonial role to fraudulently alter the election results instead of simply certifying them. And even after an angry crowd violently attacked the Capitol, he still tried to persuade members of Congress to prevent certification. In many ways, the predicate was set here on day one of the Trump administration when the president directed his aides to insist on an easily disprovable lie about his inaugural crowd size, arguing that more people witnessed Donald Trump's inauguration than President Obama's, despite the video evidence.
All right, so I'll try to stop breaking into this video so much, but damn, man, this guy is so incredibly Trump freaking deranged. Just listen to the anger and the disdain in his voice. This is not a serious journalist delivering their viewers the facts. This is a spoiled, whiny elitist complaining to his ever-shrinking echo chamber. And come on, man, is he still bringing up the inauguration crowd size? These people are literally insane. He's right about one thing. That is where it all started. You know, that is when they started parsing and picking at every single word that Trump ever said. You know, started fact-checking every moment and using any possible disparity, any mistake or lie or whatever to impugn literally everything about the guy. As if someone who could exaggerate the size of a crowd could never be trusted with the fate of the nation. Those things are undistinguishable to them. And this is just about as crazy as it gets. So honestly, when has this guy or any of the elite propagandist class ever questioned any of Biden's lies? You know, the guy built his life on lies, everything from outright plagiarizing speeches to lying about marching in Selma when he was actually a staunch segregationist, lying about his epiphany on gay marriage in the 50s. Yet these ghouls, they never asked him, well, if you had this epiphany in the 50s when you were a kid seeing men kiss, why did it take you 50 years to support gay marriage? The guy does nothing but lie, especially regarding his son's business deals. And these people are still talking about the crowd size and Trump exaggerating the crowd size. Come on, man.
And a day later here on Meet the Press, the president's counselor, Kellyanne Conway, offered this awkward explanation.
You're saying it's a falsehood, and they're giving, Sean Spicer, our press secretary, gave alternative facts to that. But the point remains.
Wait a minute. Alternative facts? Look, alternative facts are not facts. They're falsehoods. So his presidency began with alternative facts and apparently ended with alternate electors. And it may all add up to a scenario where voters have to decide.
Anyway, man, you know, I don't want to subject you guys to Chuck Todd's greatest hits here, but let's get to the appearance of Trump's attorney, John Lara. You know, I'm not entirely sure why these attorneys would bother coming on a program like this, or really any program, but let's have a look at what he has to say.
Now is one of Donald Trump's attorneys in this specific case, John Lara. Mr. Lara, welcome to Meet the Press.
Good morning.
Let me start with this. Is the defense to this indictment he didn't do it, or he was allowed to do what he did?
The defense is quite simple. Donald Trump, President Trump, believed in his heart of hearts that he had won that election. And as any American citizen, he had a right to speak out under the First Amendment. He had a right to petition governments around the country, state governments, based on his grievances that election irregularities had occurred. He had every right to speak about the important issues that were taking place after the election. Certainly, Mr. Pence, his vice president, agreed with him that there were anomalies and discrepancies in the election process. And Mr. Trump had every right to petition government and enforce his First Amendment rights. That's why this indictment is an attack on the First Amendment. The government, the Biden administration, would have to prove beyond a reasonable doubt that President Trump did not believe that he had won the election. They will never be able to do that. And that's why this prosecution is so ill-conceived.
You know, you mentioned that he had the right to do all these things. Well, he did all of those things. He filed his petitions in court. He got...
Man, just listen to this guy's tone. He is not acting like a journalist. He's acting like a school principal scolding a child. Only this time the child is obviously much more smart, much more intelligent than the principal. So let me know in the comments if this is always, if you guys have seen this, if this is always the way the guy behaves. I haven't seen him in years, but this doesn't seem much like an interview tactic. Feels like basically performance art for his viewers, as if he just can't be seen to treat this guy fairly. Let me know in the comments if, you know, I'm just watching this in a super sensitive mindset, or if I'm really seeing what I'm seeing. And guys, before we keep rolling, make sure you like, comment, subscribe, most importantly, share.
Mentioned that he had the right to do all these things. Well, he did all of those things. He filed his petitions in court. He got a couple of recounts. All of the, he everything you outlined as saying he had the right to do, he did have the right to do. He executed that strategy. And apparently when he didn't get the result that he liked, then he kept looking for another strategy. At what point does he accept the truth that he didn't win?
Well, he believes he won, and the Biden administration will never be able to prove beyond a reasonable doubt that he didn't. But what he's being indicted for ultimately is following legal advice from an esteemed scholar, John Eastman, that he could petition his own vice president and ask his vice president to pause the voting on January 6th to give the states one last chance to certify or re-audit. That was the ultimate ask that President Trump made in his ellipse speech. That's clearly protected. Let's go back, if we could, and see what was going on January 6th. Both Vice President Pence and President Trump saw that they had 10 million votes more than they had in 2016. No president has ever lost under those circumstances. They also saw that Joe Biden outperformed Hillary Clinton by 15 million votes, even though she was an inspirational candidate and Joe Biden was sitting at home in his basement. They also saw that President Trump won almost all of the disputed counties. In addition, they had over 1,000 people come forward and under oath say that there were discrepancies in the election. And finally, and most importantly, what President Trump and Vice President Pence saw were that the rules of the game had been changed by local electoral officials contrary to the state legislatures. So he took what he was entitled to do, which was petition Vice President Pence on January 6th. Once that petition was completed and Vice President Pence rejected his position, it was over and there was a peaceful transition of power.
So all of this is absolutely true. And the thing, to me, the things that are most glaring and the most provable are the states that did change their voting rules on the fly and without warning, contrary to their own state laws and their own state constitutions. So how could the government believe that Trump could witness those things happening and then believe that whatever advice he was getting, whoever was telling him that he was wrong, how could he see both things and believe both things? I just can't see how that's possible. And I absolutely love that this guy just told Chuck Todd that there was a peaceful transfer of power. I'm guessing that Todd is about to lose his stuff and start crying about insurrection and government overthrow and all this stuff. But let's see what happens.
Look, I got to unpack a couple of those things there because some of it is just sort of political spin, and I understand that. But let me get to this issue of the esteemed legal scholars.
No, it's part of our legal defense.
Hang on a minute. I understand that. The esteemed legal scholars. Here's what the former Attorney General Bill Barr said about that strategy. I want to get you to react to it.
I don't think this defensive advice of counsel is going to go forward because I think the president would have to get on the stand and subject himself to cross-examination in order to raise that, and he'd also have to waive attorney-client privilege.
Is the former president going to take the stand?
Advice of counsel can be raised without anyone taking the stand. That's just plain wrong. But what we had was a very, very thoughtful memo by John Eastman, who was a professor of law, dean of a law school, head of a constitutional scholarship program, and well understood and well renowned. He had been a Supreme Court clerk and a Fourth Circuit clerk. Even Mike Pence said he was the legal scholar that was developing a lot of these points. People disagree about constitutional principles all the time. Certainly, Mr. Barr may have disagreed with Mr. Eastman. Mm-hmm. That happens every day in our government. It never leads to a criminal charge. But one thing for certain, President Trump acted under the advice of counsel when he petitioned, under the First Amendment, petitioned Mr. Pence.
So let me understand
this. Legally protected speech.
So what you're arguing is if the president did violate the law, he did so because he got advice from counsel to violate the law?
No, that's what people misunderstand. In order to have a violation of law, you have to have criminal intent, and in this case, corrupt intent. And what that means is that you have to have some desire to do something unlawful. Mm-hmm. If your attorney is telling you that you have a right to petition Congress, then that completely eliminates any criminal intent. So under those circumstances, you are not violating the law. Your actions require you to state your position, but it's not a violation, so you would be acquitted.
Well, that's pretty interesting stuff, no doubt. It appears that everything that Chuck has been telling his viewers is absolutely 100% wrong. And notice that this snotty, in-your-face tone is gone. The guy is like almost dejected. He's almost about to give up. He sounds pretty disappointed, but did he really think that these questions and statements from, other people were some sort of gotcha? And this lawyer, this dude came prepared, man.
Let me get you to respond.
Your contact, regardless of your conduct.
Right, I understand. You keep saying some certain things that Vice President Pence apparently agreed with. Let me play what Vice President Pence says the former president asked him to do. Here's what he said he was asked to do.
Mm-hmm. Let's be clear on this point. It wasn't just that they asked for a pause. The president specifically asked me, and his gaggle of crackpot lawyers asked me to literally reject votes, which would have resulted in the issue being turned over to the House of Representatives, and literally chaos would have ensued.
So he's just disputing the version of events you're describing.
No, not at all. He's substantiating it. In this respect, there were some preliminary discussions along the lines that Vice President Pence described, but the ultimate ask, which was done at the ellipse, was to pause the voting for a period of time. Now, issues like this get discussed and thrashed about all the time, but the ultimate call made by President Trump was to ask for a pause. If you read Vice President Pence's book, he agrees completely with President Trump that there were these anomalies, discrepancies, even fraud in the election. Vice President Pence wanted those debated in Congress. President Trump asked that they be debated at the state legislature. So you had a disagreement there. But once again, these kinds of constitutional and statutory disagreements don't lead to criminal charges. And one thing that Mr. Pence has never said is that he thought President Trump was acting criminally. Indeed, Vice President Pence is an attorney. If he at any point said or thought that President Trump was acting unlawfully or contrary to criminal law, he would have said that. No one ever suggested that. President Trump was exercising
actually, he
his
has
right.
said that.
And by the way, there's another.
He said the president asked him to violate the Constitution.
No, he's never,
he said the president asked him to violate the Constitution, which is another way of saying he asked him to break the law.
He never said. No, that's wrong. That's wrong. A technical violation.
Just another fantastic gotcha double fail. Keep them coming, Chuck. I don't think you're either unprepared, you're not prepared enough for this guy, or you're not smart enough to be talking about this issue, especially with this particular person. This dude is sharp.
Violation of the Constitution is not a violation of criminal law. That's just plain wrong. And to say that is contrary to decades of legal statutes.
Let's get out of the constitutional.
Let me say one last thing, if I could.
Go ahead.
Well, no, because this is a constitutional case. This is going to be the most important civil rights constitutional case in decades. And there's one other issue that's very important. Everything that President Trump did was while he was in office as a president. He is now immune from prosecution for acts that he takes in connection with those policy decisions.
So you're going to try to.
The administration has not addressed that.
An interesting legal place you're going to go that will also create some constitutional questions. I want to get you to.
Dude looks absolutely freaking shell-shocked, He has his eye on the clock, man. Chuck, just end it, Chuck. Your viewers, their brains are literally exploding right now. They've never heard this stuff before. Now they're starting to question literally everything that you've ever told them. You got to get out of this. You got to find a way to get out of this gracefully, dude. As gracefully as you possibly can.
Has not addressed that.
An interesting legal place you're going to go that will also create some constitutional questions. I want to get you to respond, though, to something that seems a bit more straightforward on intent. It's the infamous phone call in Georgia. Let me play an excerpt.
The ballots are corrupt, and you're going to find that they are, which is totally illegal. It's more illegal for you than it is for them, because you know what they did and you're not reporting it. That's a criminal offense. All I want to do is this. I just want to find 11,780 votes, which is one more than we have, because we won the state.
If he had proof he won the state, why did he threaten the Secretary of State with a criminal with a criminal charge?
That wasn't a threat at all. What he was asking for is for Raffensperger to get to the truth. He believed that there were in excess of 10,000 votes that were counted illegally. And what he was asking for is the Secretary of State to act appropriately and find these votes that were counted illegally. That was an hold on one second. That was an aspirational ask. He's entitled to petition even state government, but that doesn't involve an obstruction of federal government. But what the Biden administration has said is somehow President Trump obstructed a federal proceeding. That relates to what was going on in the states, and President Trump had every right to ask the Secretary of State, I believe that this election was conducted improperly. There are deficiencies here. I want to see if there are more than 10,000 votes or whatever the number was that were counted illegally. Once again, that's core political speech.
Boom. Another absolute Chuck Todd fail. Right now, his viewers are starting to think one of two things. Either they think this lawyer is incredibly prepared and can read Chuck Todd's mind, or, and more likely, everything that this man is saying is true. And everything that Chuck Todd has been telling them for who knows how long is nothing more than an echo chamber amplified bunch of lies. And Chuck, you got to find a way to call this thing, dude.
Bringing up a criminal violation is somehow speech. I mean, it's the way it sounds like somebody saying that's a mighty fine, it's a mighty fine restaurant you have there. It'd be a shame if something happened to it. I mean, it's no different than, I mean, it's a vague threat here to bring up a criminal offense.
Have you read the First Amendment? Oh, no, Chuck, have you read the First Amendment? I mean, political speech is the most protected speech that we have under our Constitution. It's important to go back and read the text of the First Amendment. So you can actually say that a government official is acting criminally. That's protected by the First Amendment. If we lose the First Amendment rights, then heaven forbid we lose the right to freedom of the press. We lose the right for me to appear. We lose the right for you to speak.
You're not allowed to use speech. You're not allowed to use speech, though, in order to get somebody to commit a crime. And what he was directing Raffensperger to do was to
advocate.
So you have to. No, you're saying he didn't commit a crime.
You haven't. You haven't read the cases because, for example, you can encourage someone not to register for selective service. I could see you, Chuck, registering for Vietnam, and I can go up to you and say, Chuck, don't register for that war. It's illegal.
And I violated the law.
Keep walking. Go home. No, that's protected speech. My speech is protected. Right. That's the point.
You coerced me to violate the law.
I can ask you. No. And by the way, there's a Supreme Court case. You got to read it. Right on point. Hammerschmidt, and it says that's not illegal. We can have this discussion, but people need to start looking carefully at what our country stands for, what the Constitution stands for. It applies to President Trump just like it applies to everyone else. If we eviscerate our First Amendment rights, we will no longer have a country where people can freely speak their minds.
Have you been able to find any evidence? I know the campaign paid for 2 studies that didn't find any evidence that would find enough fraud to overturn the election. Have you found any evidence yet? Because you have said you plan on relitigating the 2020 election, and nobody has found any evidence to back up Donald Trump's claims, and it's been 2.5 years.
We will be litigating the 2020 election because much of that has not been litigated. But what we do know, which is not in dispute under any circumstances, is that local state election officials changed the rules in the middle of the game. They sent out absentee ballots.
Hang on. Look, I understand. You said this a few times.
Can I finish? You asked me a question, but you're not allowing me to finish.
Mr. Lauro.
No.
Chuck, this is not what I meant when I said find a way to end this thing gracefully, dude. This is not graceful. You're coming apart, bro. Hold it together. You're getting absolutely served here. And really, man, just answer the guy's question. No, you have not read the First Amendment. Not once. In fact, you don't even know where to find it.
You're not
all of
allowing
this
me
was
to finish.
litigated.
You're
Mr. Laurel,
you're like the Biden.
No. Don't get politics with me.
You don't understand.
I've allowed you to filibuster a lot.
No.
I'm
getting legal with you.
All of this, Mr. Laurel, every single. Go ahead. You're trying to make you're trying to create a confrontation for no reason. But go ahead.
This is. No, I don't want to, Chuck. I'm just trying to let you know that the criminal rules are different than what you're talking about. In a criminal case, the government has a burden of proof. We don't have any requirement to prove anything. All we have to do is put the government to its test. And one of the things that will be shown at trial is that there were these institutional anomalies where state election officials unlawfully broke the law, and Mr. Trump was entitled to petition government and assert that he was right. Yeah. That's part of the First Amendment protection. We don't have to prove fraud. People don't understand that. All we have to do is that President Trump was acting with his conviction that this election was conducted improperly.
Right. I just want to let viewers know that everything you've said and all that, he actually went to the courts. All of this was actually deemed legal that was done in the states. All of this was, but look, we're not debating this. I got one last question for you.
False.
I need to get you to react to what your client is saying about the prosecutor. Here's
what he means is, one last question. You know, I absolutely need to get a win here, man. Please give me a win, bro. That's what he means.
You to react to what your client is saying about the prosecutor. Here's what he said last night.
Deranged Jack Smith. He's a deranged human being. You take a look at that face, you say, that guy is a sick man. There's something wrong with him.
Do you believe he's deranged?
President Biden in April of 2022 said he wanted President Trump prosecuted and he wanted him out of the race. He repeated that in November of 2022. As a result, President Biden has put in motion a political prosecution in the middle of an election season. And obviously, everything is open to politics. I'm not involved in politics. I'm just representing a client. I'm ensuring that justice is done in this case. President Trump is entitled to his day in court, and he'll get it.
Right. Do innocent people attack prosecutors?
This is a political campaign right now. This prosecution was instituted by President Biden, and in the middle of that campaign, people are going to speak out. My role is not to address anything about prosecutors, but I will say this. There has been a history in the Justice Department of rogue prosecutions. They went after Arthur Andersen, a major accounting firm, destroyed the company. And the DOJ lost 9-0. They went after the former governor of Virginia in a prosecution, a Republican governor who was convicted unfairly, reversed 9-0. And now the Justice Department, the Biden Justice Department, is going after a former president for acts that he carried out in fulfillment of his oath as president of the United States.
Are you confident that the former president can be trusted with discovery and isn't going to weaponize what he learns about Mark Meadows or others who may be cooperating?
Well, I'm shocked, and I can find you a lawyer to address this, but I'm shocked that all the news media outlets aren't protesting what the government is trying to do. They're trying to say that we have discovery that's not sensitive, but we don't want the press to hear about it. And Mr. Trump, our team is saying, President Trump is saying, that if there's evidence out there that the government has that's exculpatory or informative, then the press has a right to know. But the Biden administration doesn't want the press to know that. And I'm shocked that there aren't petitions now filed in the district court opposing what the Biden administration is doing.
John Laurel, the defense attorney for the former president. Appreciate you coming on and sharing your legal perspective with us. Thank you, sir.
So that's pretty hilarious, man. This dude, he isn't shocked at all. And the press, they don't seem to care at all. You know, the press, they don't care about holding government accountable. They don't care about upholding the law or the Constitution. They don't care about anyone's rights unless all of those roads lead back to a Democrat. If things like this don't wake people up, you know, and then they're really not going to wake up. You know, our press has just become an arm of this government. And what in the hell kind of questions are these anyway? Do innocent people attack prosecutors? what are you saying, Chuck? Are you saying that if you don't like someone's demeanor, they're guilty of not just bad behavior, but anything and everything that the government says that they're guilty of? It's insane. And it tells you exactly who these people really are. Chuck Todd has been drinking his own Kool-Aid for so long that he truly believes that Donald Trump can't be trusted with the documents that are his legal constitutional right to have for his own defense. He believes that Trump is so evil that the government needs special rules to finally get rid of the guy. And how do these people not hear the words coming out of their own mouths when they say them, when they ask such ridiculous questions, man? Anyway, guys, that was eye-opening for me. I had to subject myself to that so that you don't have to. And I hope it was pretty eye-opening for you as well. This is what they think of us, man. And this is how they believe that we believe. This lawyer seems incredibly sharp. And this case really does seem like more and more of a political, sham with every new piece that we learn. It's truly freaking insane what it's come to, what this country's come to. And it really, a lot of it is the fault of this powerful, media personalities like this, like Chuck Todd and the many, many people just like him. They've led their viewers so far astray that they really don't have a clue what is going on. And even when they find the information, finally, they're so deep in that it's just not possible to reconcile it with what they think they believe, what they do believe. Anyway, people are so honestly turned around and so fueled by their own confirmation bias. And I know I'm guilty too, but at least my confirmation bias is telling me things that are actually true. The only way to move forward, I think, is if we start tricking ourselves. If people would measure everything in their mind as if it were the other guy, their preferred puppet doing it, because they're all puppets in a way. If this stuff was being done to Biden, the left would be losing their freaking minds. And if all the alleged corruption stuff that's been trickling out about Joe Biden had been said about Donald Trump, it would be all over. They would literally be they'd be imploded. They'd have a completely different perspective. Anyway, that's just my take, guys. I'm going to stop rambling. Let me know your take in the comments. And if you haven't already, please, guys, make sure to like, comment, subscribe. Most importantly, share the Common Sense Garage. We'll see you in the next one.